Okay, folks, it's about 2 minutes after 7. We're calling to order this meeting of the Brattleboro Development Review Board. This evening we have a slightly revised agenda, and there's a new one over there. In case you haven't seen it, the first application is going to be the 147 Orchard Street application that was continued from the last meeting. The Development Review Board, before every meeting, we go through some opening remarks, and since there are more members of the public here than I'm used to seeing, I'm going to guess you haven't all been here before. This is where I explain how this is going to work. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we're on the record, this is your opportunity, and perhaps your only opportunity, to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. In the event our decision is appealed to the Environmental Court, the court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at the evidence from our hearings, the regulations or applicable law, and determine if the evidence supports the findings and decisions of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this proceeding may appeal a decision made by this board, so I strongly encourage all of you to speak up at this hearing. Because we're on the record, we ask that everybody who thinks they wish to speak to any application swear or affirm that their testimony is going to be truthful. So the way we do this is I'm going to ask everybody who wants to speak or thinks they might possibly speak to raise their right hand, and I'm going to swear you in right now. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay, if anybody here didn't get sworn in and changes their mind, tell me you didn't get sworn in, and I will swear you in. If you don't do the oath, what testimony you give is not considered part of the record, and we're not supposed to consider it. And if we do, and somebody appeals, the appeals court is just going to treat it as if it never happened. This is a real oath, just like the one in the court. Applicants require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. That's 4 votes out of 7. If we do not have a full board present to hear your application, we'll consider a request to continue. As you can see tonight, we've got 6. What that means is that you need 4 votes out of 6. Did we get an indication from Michael if he'll watch on video?
Yes, he will.
Okay, so if you feel like you want 7 votes, you have 2 options, basically. You can ask for a continuance to our next hearing, when we will probably have 7. Or Michael Goodwin, who's also on the board, and does he have any conflicts?
None that I'm aware of.
He'll watch a video of this. This is all videotaped, and he can vote despite not being here tonight. Generally, what we do is, if the applicant wishes, we can start the hearing and take some evidence. And if it seems like it's going to be a fairly perfunctory hearing, and we're going to approve the application with the 6 of us, we can move forward. And if it seems like it's going to be a close call, the applicant can always ask for a continuance to try to get the additional board members there. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application, it is the written decision that controls the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with interest in land development applications. They do not have a special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, town attorney, or any other town department will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant or any other interested parties. Mr. Bannon, has our meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
The first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was on April 3rd, 2017. Your motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Sure there was a typo?
He fixed it.
He fixed it already. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. The first application we're going to hear tonight is John Ross from Matthew and Adrian Raptis. I disclosed at the prior hearing that I had represented the Raptises in a prior matter, I no longer represent them. I don't view it as a conflict. So are the folks here for application 2017-18 present? The way we do this generally, if you'll come and sit at this table here, the microphone there allows the people who are watching this hearing to hear you at home.
Okay.
And are you Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ross, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your project. You can sit. This is fairly informal here. And I don't know if you're aware of the last hearing, but what the board was interested in was really the amount of animals and the
Okay.
kind of animals.
Okay.
So as you tell us about your project, if you could place some emphasis on that. This will pick you up even where it's sitting. It doesn't amplify, it's just so that the community access television hears you.
All right.
So Mr. Ross, please.
I have horses, 6 horses, and two ponies and some goats. And then I have my own dogs.
Some goats, 5 to 10?
Like 4 right now.
4. Do you know how you deal with the animal waste?
The manure, I just mow it. It just goes right back into the ground. You don't smell it.
And is the whole property going to be used for pasture?
I looked at it, and I would say probably there's 15 acres. It looks like maybe like 10 if you were to clear I walked it today. A lot of tree clearing. I brought photos of my place so you can have an idea of what I
Sure,
have.
that would be helpful.
Would you like me to
You
bring?
can bring them right up and start on that end, and we'll just pass them along. So, what are the photographs of?
Well, this is
What is your property? Is this all your?
this is all mine.
Okay.
Tree line. It's 14.5 acres.
What is the area you don't plan to use?
Well, this is where my place where I live now,
Oh, I see. This is the present setup.
so you can see.
And you're going to try to replicate this to some extent?
A little bit. You just need fields just to have the horses eat grass.
Okay.
Is this what you have in mind for the barn?
No,
Or is this
it'd be similar to that. That's 200
Similar to
years
this
old.
one?
Yeah, that's style.
the tennis courts?
This is in the old barn. This is
I
an
drive by there a lot.
old cow barn.
So it's gonna be similar to the red one?
I'd like to try to do that. Yes.
Helicopter or drone?
Those are old pictures. The newer one, the house has a black roof. That's actually an airplane.
Ah,
Before drones.
before drones. That's pretty neat.
I'm there 19 years.
And where is that?
This is in Goshen, New York. Those photos.
It's in Goshen.
3 hours away.
What are you going to do about fencing? Will it be similar to this?
Yeah, 4 boards or thicker and 3 board.
And it's all going to be sort of a network of areas?
Yeah, I'd make it safe so they don't run out and it doesn't go to the neighbor's house. They're my pets. They come when I call their name.
Sure.
I have pictures. I couldn't print them out off my phone. I can show you my horse so you can see.
You can have him back, Mr. Ross.
Yeah.
Would it be all right if any members of the public who are here to hear this application looked at them?
Sure.
I can't recognize, I think, who's here who's in a butter for Orchard Street?
This one is not here.
And dimensionally, the barn's going to be similar?
I have to, the tennis court that's there is 120 feet,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna try to do that footprint
Oh,
for the
okay.
building. I'd have to have
You're going to use
a
that as a foundation?
right,
I see.
place the tennis court for a barn.
Not a big tennis player, huh?
Oh, I am, but
Okay.
my
Do
animals are first. I can always go somewhere else.
do other members of the board have some questions?
Do you plan on leaving a buffer between you and your neighbors in reference to the trees or the growth that's there?
Well, actually, when I walked it today, there's no real fencing at all. It's just like kind of mesh. It's not.
But are you gonna leave?
I could put trees up just to make
There's no
it for
trees in
sound.
there?
Not many, no. It's not laid out the way my place is. I like to make it that way, but those trees are pretty big to plant. But they're quiet, you don't hear them.
Those are the trees that are running along the tennis court, just the smaller, they look like smaller trees.
Yeah, most of
Near the
the
road.
property goes to the other side,
Uh-huh,
so
okay.
I know there are some trees that need to come down anyway. They're a hazard, they're pretty old and holes in it. Less bugs when you take those trees down.
So the barn is gonna be right on the road?
Not on the road, right where the tennis court is. The barn would only be for when the horses go in there, if it's bad weather or the farrier comes. They'd be outside most of the time. So 80% of the time the barn would be empty.
Do you plan on expanding the number of animals you have at all?
No, just want them to live their lives. I had them 19 years. I got a 28-year-old, a 21-year-old. The youngest is 3. I adopted.
So he's gonna plant a lot of trees.
What's the dimensions of a tennis court?
It's 120 feet long by, I think, 60 feet wide. That figure was 3 months ago, I'm trying to remember, when I last measured it.
So we have an aerial photograph of the property
Mm-hmm.
and it shows a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees. They're all gonna come down?
No, no. Just to make it a little bit more area, because there's very little pasture.
What percentage of the growth do you think you're gonna take down?
That's a very good question. I mean, there must be over 50 trees in there, so I don't know. I'd like to try to make it just a bigger area, like just clear out the center and leave the rest, whatever's not a liability for the horses or falling down on anything. I'd have to give it a good count with the tree guy. But with me taking trees down myself, I could say a good 30% of them need to come down anyway. They're very dangerous. Holes in them and termites and...
Do you have any problem leaving the trees up along the property line between you and your neighbors
Well, I don't have a problem with it.
and leaving a buffer? I mean,
I don't have a problem with that at all. It's just, the problem is if you want to make sure you have to check the trees out, maybe just take some of the limbs down, trim them down, or I get a tree guy to check them, because they could just fall on the fence anyway. I had that problem with my neighbor where I am. I tell them their tree is no good, and then they just went like that and then fall right on my fence, and then luckily my horses don't wander.
So are you planning a 2-story barn?
No, it'd be ground level with the high ceiling, maybe just to store hay in there. I have to get a person over here. I just looked on websites. I didn't have anyone come out yet to look at anything. something that would work well with the property and won't be an eyesore. I'm for that. If the trees are good, it'd be ideal to use the lumber from those trees to build the fencing in the barn.
Further questions from the board? Members of the public? Were you here last time? I'm sorry if I don't.
I was.
You remember the protocol? Can you get over to that
Yes,
microphone?
Jump to the mic, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm Judy Daly, here representing my husband and myself. Unfortunately, Bill couldn't attend tonight. I'm here to reiterate to the board that we both strongly oppose putting a farm on the property that we abut. Our property borders the entire north of that property, our south property. It's a full property line. Just over our property line is the tennis courts. There is a minimal tree line there now. There is not a buffer. It's very close to the road. Clearing 10 acres would be clearing a lot. It's woods. It's not have trees that need to come down that have terminated. It's woods in a neighborhood. And we really are concerned about the sounds. 6 horses, 2 ponies, 4 goats, and it says donkeys braying, horseflies, chickens, other small animals, roosters crowing, goats, the manure, what's going to happen with runoff. It's pretty open there. The wind comes right up on our property. We love to be outdoors. This is Vermont. This is why we bought in the neighborhood that we did. We love to garden and be outside with our grandchildren, and the concern for the odors and the horseflies and all, it would definitely have a negative impact on our quality of life, just being in our yard.
Can I just ask one question? I don't mean to interrupt you. Was it one donkey?
She just passed.
Oh, there's no donkey.
Oh, no.
It was one dog.
But how do we know what?
I have 3 dogs, but
Oh,
one donkey had passed.
let me just make sure I got this right. 6 horses, 2 ponies, 4 goats, 3 dogs. I mean, that doesn't really part of the farm.
No, it's not.
Are there chickens or roosters or anything like that?
I have some chickens and 1 rooster. They're quiet.
How many chickens?
Like 10.
What's your address?
21 Apple Tree Road. Our property frontage is on Orchard Street.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
That's perfectly fine. I appreciate the clarification.
You can go
So
ahead.
concern for the animals getting out. We have a lot of concerns and would appreciate you taking them into account. Thank you.
With your current setup, how do you keep the animals from escaping?
I have good fencing.
Okay.
No escapees.
No escapees, and that's in 20 years?
Yep, 19 years July I'm there.
19.
And I got neighbors around me, older place, and no complaints. I keep it very clean. It's like a country club.
Okay. And is your current plot level?
My place where I live now?
Yeah.
No, it's all hills.
Do you have runoff that goes down in whichever direction the property's slanted? Have you had to deal with that?
I did some drainage just because it was very muddy. There's a lot of clay, but there's no... It's not like you see all this poop and, diarrhea or anything like that. It's not like that, no. That'd be a cow farm. And no problems with flies other than you get a little bit of flies like right now and then it's gone. That's anywhere. And I just spray and I use SWAT and then it's... Flies really are when it's very wooded. So if you have like where I have with this property I'm looking at, they hide in the shade just like mosquitoes. If it's open and more breeze, they're not going to hang around.
Other questions? Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. If you could go to the microphone too.
I live at 316 Orchard Street. I'm just up the hill.
Could you just tell us your name,
Yeah,
please?
Josie Compton. And I'm just trying to keep I'm like maybe 4 houses up the street. And I just hope we can keep the flavor of the neighborhood. There's not much open space on that land. There is the vines for the, you planted some vines, and there's a tennis court. And that basically takes all the open space. Everything else is trees. And there was a tremendous amount of trees planted by 2 owners before. Lots of money was put in beautiful trees, which is right at the border of Orchard Street. So if you put a barn, a metal barn, I don't know if you plan to put a metal barn.
No.
But anything you put there could drastically change the neighborhood.
Right.
And my feeling is I'm just trying to keep, not have an industrial type neighborhood, just try to have keep the feeling of, and I want to preserve my investment. We pay a lot of taxes on that street. I just want to make sure that it's respected.
Did you see the photo of the barn there?
Well, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell how high it's going to be. If the trees are cut from Orchard Street to the barn, I mean, it just could be looking very messy.
You mean the trees that shield
Well, there's trees
that?
right now, right along the property, on the side of Orchard Street.
Uh-huh. So those,
Beautiful trees, by the way, that were planted.
No, I won't touch those.
Yeah. But it's just not much open space there.
Well, that's most of the wood part I'd open up where it's hilly.
It's
Yeah.
lots of trees, lots of big pines.
Right,
trees,
a lot of them are no good.
Yeah.
I walked it
I'm trying
today.
to keep the flavor of the street
Oh, I
the
understand.
same.
That's why you should see my pictures, because that's
Goats, I live
200 years old, my place.
Yeah, and I live in the farm. Goats will eat everything.
Almost. They're
Okay, so-
contained. They don't, at one time I had 60 goats. I used to have milking goats, so.
So anyway, trees on the street, you're not gonna remove the street trees?
No, I want privacy and I want to keep the content, all the,
Okay.
I want everything to blend in like I was never knew.
You're talking about the pine stand that as you look up the hills to your right,
Yes,
there's some statues in there or something?
yeah, all that, clear that out. Leave the tree line like I have in my thing, so all the way, just open up the center of it.
The density's gonna go down,
Right.
but it's still gonna be a wooded area.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Where are the chickens kept?
Right now, I have a little area by me, and it's just like a little open area with a couple little sheds they go in, and they eat all the ticks and bugs.
Where do you expect they'd be if it was,
Yeah.
if you got the new property? Sorry.
Closer to the house.
Did you know?
Well, I'm just curious about what he plans to clear out. I'm looking at this, and I don't know which part of the property is going to be cleared. Is it going to be up in here? Is it going to be down there?
It's to the right of the tennis court. If you
All
go-
of this in here?
Yeah, I think so. You can confirm with him, but that's.
I could show you if you want me to come up there.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yes,
it.
please.
Can you show us?
Here, why don't you take a pen
Yeah.
and just sort of circle or highlight or indicate one way or another which it is so that we can pass it around.
I don't think you can see it. This too dark.
I usually have a red one, but I.
So you're gonna stay that far away from the property line over there
I'm
then?
just gonna hollow it out, that's all, just like the tennis court, just have a little
Okay.
area so they can graze and the trees can.
Actually, if you
keep
could hold
shade.
it up so everybody can see
What
it.
about the area?
But we're talking this, just about like this, and that's it?
Just, yeah, not much, just to have it.
What about on the other side of the house?
Here?
Is that 10
No.
acres?
No, it's close to the road and it's.
Can we send that around so everybody can see it? Here, hold on, I want to see it too. I want to see it too. I'm gonna darken this, if you don't mind.
Not at all. It's your copy. It's just the native pastures, that's all.
In here, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. I would just move it away from the house that she was worried about. So
Yeah.
that the trees would be actually a wall and I'd make a fence in.
Right, spend this thing.
I have a highlighter.
Well, I tried my best.
I can see.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to see that picture.
No, I know.
It's just the idea is just to have a little pasture that you can graze without worrying about anything startling and get poked in the eye. Like my fields are open, so you don't have to worry about tree falling on them.
Sure. Brian, would you mind bringing this down to the abutters to look at once they're done? You can head back over there.
So essentially, it's gonna be almost like a crescent? Because these trees are gonna stay
Could leave a buffer, he said.
right in here?
How far would you stay away from the property line?
It's a good question. I just really want to have just open fields with leaving as many trees as I can from the property line for privacy and the sound, if possible, all depending on the trees' conditions and where they are. I'm going to put fencing up all the way around. Nice wood fencing, no metal poles. Not going to look commercial, it's not going to look, it's going to all blend in. Good posts, good.
I'm just wondering, would you be willing to stay 50 feet away from the property line, 25?
Well, it's a lot of, you know, a horse eats like each horse eats like an acre of land of grass. Like my horses can eat 3,000 bales of hay from September to April. So when I have the grass, that's going to be a little less money out of my pocket for keeping them warm.
See, from my standpoint, I feel like that we could make this happen, but I personally would want to have some restrictions on how close you're going to get to the property line when you take down trees. If you're willing to commit to no more animals than what you have now.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier.
And it's in Brattleboro, so I don't think a rooster is appropriate.
So how many acres are you gonna, I couldn't tell, I mean, I looked at
Yeah.
the marking, but how many acres is that you're planning to clear?
I'm not really sure where that is. The property's 15 acres. That's an acre more than what I have, so I don't know how much. I just know how far I can go because it's hilly, just to open up to have some pastures.
What's the chicken ordinance?
Yeah,
Roosters are going to be approved as a conditional use.
Okay.
right.
And have we done that in town?
There is one on Western Ave.
Yes, I went through that whole chicken thing.
And the noise impacts on that have been cause of grievance for the
Right.
neighbors.
Yeah.
So on the side opposite of the house, opposite the tennis court, you don't intend to take any trees down? You're not gonna make that pasture?
No.
But you're gonna have enough pasture if you just take out that crescent?
Most of the property is the wooded area. You know, that's where majority of the land is that's not being used.
Right, I understand that, but I'm trying to get a feel for exactly how many acres you're gonna cut. You're gonna clear and put pasture.
I didn't measure that area, but I'm hoping to get, you know, a good, I mean, there's 15 acres there, and I think maybe 6 acres is being used out of the 15. It's, you know, for a little they have a gazebo, they have all these little outbuildings that I don't want to touch, just redo them. So I have to work around that just to have an area that I can use that land, since it's...
Yeah, no, I was just wondering whether you're going to have enough pasture if you don't cut along the other side of the house.
Yeah, I should. I should.
I think I noticed there's another gentleman from the public or... Well, did you want to speak again?
Do you mind?
No, as long as he doesn't want to go. Our general practice is if nobody's spoken once, we try to get them in before they go twice. You don't want to?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Come on up. We certainly won't make you.
I'm just seriously concerned about all that clearing. It's right there. There's this, you can't really tell from this overhead picture of the trees between my property and where the barn is going to be, where the tennis courts are, but it's just this narrow tree line. It's not dense woods at all. I can see through the woods, I can see the tennis courts. It's not as dense as what this
Yeah,
looks
that's right
like.
here, so.
That I just don't believe that a barn belongs right out on Orchard Street and on our property line. And I'm concerned with preserving our investment we bought in that neighborhood because we wanted to live in a neighborhood. We didn't want to live on a farm. This is Vermont, plenty of farmland out in the country, not in the neighborhood. And we're on a hill, we get the wind right up, and runoff, you know, isn't being addressed, and this is going to majorly impact the value of our property and the quality of our lives.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment on this application? Does anybody on the board have further questions for the applicant or any of the abutters? I think a deliberative session might be appropriate, unless you guys disagree.
I think so.
So I have a motion.
Yes, I
A few
agree.
concerns.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to enter deliberative session and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. What we're gonna do, folks, is we're gonna deliberate and come back on the record so you can stretch your legs, enjoy the water fountain. That's really it. Okay, we just came back from deliberative session. It's about 10 minutes to 8. Mr. Ross, we had deliberative session and the board was split, but not in your favor. There are 4 votes against. And so what we do in this situation is we generally have the motion and we'll vote on it just as we did in there.
Okay.
And Brian can explain to you the procedure afterwards if you want to appeal or do anything else, okay? So, George, you want to make the motion to approve, or I can?
Well, I will. So moved. A motion, I would approve it with provisions.
Okay, and I'll second that. Any further discussion beyond what we had in deliberative session? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nope.
No, you're not in favor.
I'm not in favor.
We're the only ones in favor.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
So the motion fails 2-4. Mr. Ross, thank you for taking the time to come before us.
Thank you.
The next application is 2017-19. Nathan Chris of Cavalry Custom Builders for, is it Wojcik? That's you? If you could just come up to the party just as this last gentleman did. Are you who's Mr. Chris? Who's Mr. Wojcik?
I'm Mr. Chris. Mr. Wojcik has to work tonight, but his father, Walter Wojcik, is here to take his place.
Sure. So can you tell us a little bit about the project?
Well, the property is in need of some siding, whether it's scrape and paint or vinyl siding. The homeowner was wondering and kind of wanted to do the vinyl siding, more maintenance-free long-term. Most of the houses across the street are all vinyl, so when you look out the windows, you see a bunch of vinyl houses. We met with the historical committee, and they had a bunch of things that they would like to see happen if we did use it. You know, like we don't use vinyl corners, like we lap it a certain way, that kind of thing, and to kind of keep the character in the neighborhood. Basically using the vinyl, but not make it look like vinyl with all the corners and accessories, so it looks more traditional. You know, we want to stay with the same color. That's the house is existing. We want to stay with the same exposure and stuff like that, and we want to retain all the architectural details. Like when our permit, we requested for changing windows, but like the architectural windows with a different trim work and stuff like that, we want to keep those windows and rehab it so that way the house looks fairly close to what it is existing now, but obviously without all the paint peeling off all over the place and stuff like that. So
What's the condition of the wood?
the condition of the wood.
Yeah.
The condition of the wood siding's in pretty bad shape. It's
Cedar?
a good portion of the actual paint is right down the bare wood, and it's been like that for many, many years.
What kind of siding is it presently?
It's probably like a spruce, I would think, maybe. It's probably the original siding for the house, but it hasn't been kept up on over the years, and the paint is in very, very, very bad shape.
Is it bad enough where the wood is starting to rot?
Yeah, there is a few sections where we will have to make repairs, especially on some of the crown trim up near the soffit areas and stuff like that. The water's come over and rotted some portions of those and the siding and stuff as well.
But that's gonna stay whether you do vinyl or...
Yeah, all those architectural details, you know, if there is repairs needed, they would be repaired to remain the same. You know, we want to try to keep the character of the house and the architectural details as much as humanly possible.
If you just take the clapboards that would be replaced, what percentage of that is rotted out, would you say? Ballpark, I realize you probably...
Yeah,
don't
I would say
really-
maybe 20%. And some of them are in bad shape, but some of them aren't really rotted. The paint is mostly stripped off it from the weather and that kind of stuff. So there might be, you know, some replacing, but not, you know, not the whole house or anything, you know.
What would be the difference if you decided, if we said, no, you can't do vinyl siding, then what would happen?
We would probably, you know, for economic wise, probably scrape and paint the best we could. You know, we're trying not to do that because it's a labor of love that you have to do every so many years till pretty much for the rest of your life, you know, so we're looking for something a little more economical because it is a rental properties. We're trying to keep, you know, costs down and stuff too for that long term. That way we can keep, you know, affordable housing in the neighborhoods and stuff too, you know, because of that kind of stuff. I mean, we want to try to keep the character of the house and all the architectural details, and, you know, that's what we really like about the house, you know.
Yeah. Do you have any additional pictures besides the one that we have from Google Maps? Did you bring anything like that?
I didn't bring any pictures. The letter you guys sent me said just to bring the samples and stuff.
That's fine. Can we see what you brought for samples?
Yeah, sure.
Make sure you give this back because this is Brian's copy.
I promise.
You can mess with mine, but don't mess with Brian's.
That house used to be beautiful.
Yeah. So I got a bunch of different things, obviously, the windows, and
Which one it is now?
this is the color that we'd like to go with, which is
So-
as close as we can to the original color that the house is now.
I know this is awkward. We want the people at home to be able to see this. Can you stand at the end of the table
Okay.
and just sort of show us so that the camera can pick you up as well? I'm sorry, I know it's not it's not the most natural thing in the world, but
So this is the color, which is the closest color to what the house is now. We're trying to keep it, pretty much, we want to just fix it up to a color and architectural the way it is, but obviously make it so the paint's not peeling. So this is a very close color match to what it is there now. And
What color is that?
this is a heritage cream color, which is pretty close to what's there.
Now,
And
the houses that are on either side of it, they have vinyl?
he means
The gray-
he means across the street.
Oh, across the
across the
street.
street, when you sit in the windows and you look out, or if you walk across that yellow line, a good majority of the houses have vinyl siding them
Right,
already.
but these don't.
The ones still left in the right do not. That was the historical committee, we argued with them a little bit because there is vinyl on many houses within a stone's throw of that. And that was one thing that they said that, you know, they kind of wished that years ago they hadn't made them not do that, but there's nothing we can do about that, but, you know, that's why we're, you know,
So what do you do with the corners?
well, we had, when we met with the architectural committee, there's many different ways you can do the corners. We want to try to keep a traditional corner as much as possible, but we want to, like some of the corners are rotted, so we would rebuild them. And what we do is we build them out a little bit so that...
With wood?
With wood and stuff like that. That way when this vinyl comes into it, it goes behind it a little bit. So it looks more like an authentic siding. It looks more like a clap going on instead of, you know, the J channel alongside it and that kind of stuff. Because again, we're trying to make use of the efficiency of the vinyl and the durability of the vinyl, but not make it look like all the accessories with all the J channel and stuff like that. It's more of a hybrid kind of thing where we can really, you know, utilize the best of both worlds, you know, and still keep the character of the house.
If you did the scrape and paint, you could match the color
Some of that.
as it is?
Yeah.
Uh,
Better in the picture.
That would probably be our alternative, you know,
Right.
cost-wise, we're trying to, you know, because if you have a lead abatement company come in and take all the siding off the house, you're looking close to $100,000, and they still gotta repaint it again, we're putting siding on, so, you know, cost versus value, we're trying to keep it realistic, you know?
mhm.
Obviously, these samples, they didn't have samples with double fours, you know, because they do stay with the double four pattern that is on the house currently. But this is what it would look like, you know, it has energy efficient foam on the back, you know, it has a wood grain texture, and it would be smaller, it'd be the 4-inch ones, and this, in that other color that I showed you. This is the best that you can get, you know, it's the thicker version, it's not it's the good stuff, you know.
Would it be all right if we passed that around?
Yeah, sure. Would you like to see the color as well with that?
Yeah, sure.
And as far as windows, there is a good majority of the windows that are in significantly bad shape. We did want to try to mirror the character of what was there with the new windows. And the state, because there is state permits on this project also, a bunch of the windows have to be egress and that kind of thing for the state. So that way the state inspector's happy with me and stuff like that. The architectural windows, we are going to save those and we're going to take them out, we're going to de-lead them, we're going to restore them to their former glory and put them back in. But the regular plain Jane square ones, we're going to try to get the closest match we can to those, but we newer, more energy efficient windows.
Will they white? Will they be white?
Well, that's a good question. The permit we put in, the homeowner would like a green with green trim. But again, I know that the historical committee controls colors and stuff like that. So that we would like the green, but whether or not the green is legal. I know some of the existing storms on there are green, and some of them are white. You got a kind of a mixed bag over the years. People tend to repair them.
I always changed a lot.
Other questions from the board?
The deck railing will stay the way it is, the porch railing. That won't be vinyl.
No, that won't be vinyl, no. The porch railing, if we don't touch it, is grandfathered into state code, but it is illegal code because it's too low. So as long as we don't touch it, we can keep the exact same spindles and stuff and repaint them if you like that. But once we touch it, then we have to bring it up to state code, which is taller. So that's, we're trying to keep the character of the house with a lot of those features. So, you know, if it's in good shape, stuff like that, we can, you know, take the paint off it and redo that kind of stuff. Yeah, but the bulk of the house is the siding where the paint is just absolutely shredded everywhere, you know?
You testing the siding there, George?
Yeah, I wanted to see if it really would withstand.
Other questions from the board? Are there any members of the public who came for this application?
Walter Wojcik, he's the son, or I'm sorry, the father of the son who's working at the library.
Would Mr. Wojcik like to speak? Are you Mr. Wojcik? I'm looking at you like you are.
Yes, we talked
I didn't raise my hand because I have significant hearing loss and I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh.
I didn't take the oath.
Oh, that's
I'd be
okay.
happy to.
That's okay. Does anybody have questions about the property they want to ask Mr. Wojcik?
Oh, I have a question, general question. Are you, I noticed that in the photo there's a garage. Is anything going to be done with that?
That's to be determined. You know, a lot of the interior stuff that we're doing that's already been approved, and the rear stairs that we're doing has already been approved. As of right this moment, we don't have any plans for it, but I'm sure that we will do something with it. What that's going to be, we're not sure, whether it's painting it or whether it's, I'm sure once we put new siding on that, you're not going to want to see the paint peeling off of the garage. So I don't know if that would be a stipulation to you guys where if we did the house, we had to do the garage too to keep, you know, to improve the neighborhood, that kind of thing, which I wouldn't be opposed to either, you know.
Other questions from the board? I don't know if the board wants another deliberative session or if there's a consensus here. Why don't you guys give me a little direction?
We don't have any roosters.
Well, I've seen vinyl jobs.
Please.
I've seen vinyl jobs on houses that are horrible, and I've also seen vinyl jobs on houses that you can't tell the difference.
We're trying not to make it look like the houses across the street.
Is it Tamarack vinyl?
What's that?
The funeral home is a Tamarack vinyl?
That's our intent, is to make it use the vinyl, but not make it look like the vinyl, to where it's a beautiful finished product, but you don't have all the J channel around. Like when you look across the street, you see all the J channel around all the windows, it makes you crazy. You know, we want a very high-end, very nice look for the neighborhood, but with long-term durability of the vinyl, you know.
I have a question, which says that it's listed with the National Register of Historic Places. Is that gonna change that registry if you put the vinyl on it?
As we were going back and forth with the historical committee, I don't know that is the house registered with the National Historic Committee?
That's what it is.
Or district, or the whole district is?
Yeah, you're stuck.
It's the whole district.
Oh, it's the whole district.
Yeah, can you just go over the microphone?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Adam Hubbard, and I'm just going to offer 2 cents. I have a property in the neighborhood at the corner of Horton and Canal. It's also in the historic district, and it's a big gray house rental property, and it has vinyl siding, and it was done in a similar way to I think what this gentleman's describing, with wide corner boards and wide trim around the windows. And when I was looking at the house, it also has the quality of these 2 houses. I know, I'm familiar with them, where there's a lot of windows and a lot of detail, so you don't get those long runs of vinyl. And that, when I went to buy this house, I literally had to tap on it to figure out if it was vinyl. And I can also speak to the economic viability of the project they're undertaking. I appreciate that those houses getting cleaned up, and to make it more sustainable would financially for them.
Yeah,
stripping that would be.
Yeah.
I get that part of it.
Yeah.
And I think in that area, you know, you really, it's so just a liability if it's not done to you, you know, to it over the long haul. So.
And I'm sure everybody's tired of looking at that, going off that side and driving by.
That house used to be immaculate.
Yeah, so we'd like to kind of bring it back, you know.
Yeah.
There is 3 apartments in there for the community that we're gonna, you know, try to keep renting out for affordable housing too, you know. We're trying to keep things economically viable for, you know, the homeowner.
Okay. Should we have a motion?
We can do it here, we can talk about it there. So it's up to you guys. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm kind of a curmudgeon on this. I think it would be nice if it was wood and paint. I'm just kind of an old-fashioned guy. It's not, I totally understand where you're coming from. I just feel like that neighborhood is kind of on the brink of...
I guess our feelings about it too is like, there's other things in the neighborhood, like when you look around the neighborhood from the backyard, you see these towering solar panels with all the steel work sticking up out of the roof, and to me that's not historical either. And when I look across the street and I see rows of vinyl sided houses, that's not historical either. So I mean, it's, you know, I guess from a builder's standpoint, I see a lot of non-historical things too.
That's true.
I see Domino's Pizza within 10 feet of a historical district. You know.
And for me, looking at the house, I don't think it'd be too many years before it'd be looking similar again.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, that siding's to the point where so much of that paint's been stripped off, and from the weather, and so much of that, we're trying to avoid like every 5 years having to go out there and, you know, it's a big house, there's a lot of that to do, so economically, that's gonna be a big chunk of money every so many years, and, you know, we don't want it to keep going down this road with, you know, paint peeling off and stuff, and.
No, I understand. I suspect the rest of the board disagrees with me. Usually they do that right about now. But I don't know.
Well, I do.
You do, okay, he does.
Yeah, I just think, you know, with the conditions that the trim boards be built out to cover the joint,
Yeah.
you know, instead of J-channel, I think the place can look, you know, very nice.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and that's what our intent is, you know.
How about throw the garage in too?
Yeah, I mean, if
Sure.
you're not gonna, if you keep the garage and you have to do the garage, they may have to come back again and say they wanna get rid of the garage. I mean, you
Probably
know.
makes sense.
No, I'm fine with that, if that's what you guys' wishes are. Certainly makes sense, you know.
Well, I would normally be opposed to vinyl, but because there's already vinyl in the neighborhood, vinyl siding in the neighborhood and not well done, you know, it says one of the National Park Service things is that the use, if the vinyl siding will affect the whole district, and the district has already been affected.
Yeah, that's kind of my.
And so, because normally I would be with you.
I mean, and that vinyl is, I mean, I grew up when vinyl was just flat, you know, it's just, yeah, you wouldn't put it on. But, I mean, that looks like wood.
There's really nothing closer to the color than the beige.
This color?
That's a yellowish.
That's pretty close. We
You'll be
painted
surprised.
we painted a test sample and
All
stuck
right.
it on the house with the meter panel, and it's darn close.
Okay. It looks different here, but I realize
Yeah,
it's
it's
You go too yellow
right.
and you go way past it.
And,
Yeah.
I made that mistake before.
and what about the windows as far as color for the trim work around the windows? Keep it what's existing?
To me, white is the traditional, but I
Yeah.
don't know if other
White.
people disagree.
Yeah, I would do white.
Do white. Okay.
What, on the house?
Yeah,
Trim,
Window
trim
trim.
color.
yeah, around the trim around all
Show
the
me that
windows.
color again.
This is the siding color.
Right.
Do you want to look at it?
Right now, there's currently some are green, some are white, you know.
Yeah.
You know what
Can I see the picture?
See
Oh, I
the
saw the
trim.
picture, it's yellow. The house is yellow.
Yeah, this is yellow. What color is the
What
window?
color is it?
I was always
Because
amazed
the
because
storms
for
are
years
great.
that house was the standout, best maintained house in the neighborhood there.
Yeah, not so much anymore.
What's the trim around the windows?
White.
Is
Yeah,
it?
most of it's white. He's saying some of it's green. though.
Well, some of the storms that go over the windows are green. That's where I get my
Some of
decisions
the
this week.
trim is
There's a
green,
lot of
the
green.
storms and stuff are green, but the trim
Oh.
around the windows is white.
Keep it white?
Yeah.
Keep
I
it
would,
white.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What do you want? You
Well, I
want-
was gonna say, I like the yellow siding, I mean, the colors on it, I always thought were very nice.
Yeah.
But the windows were always white.
Yeah, the windows were always white, yeah.
That's what we're saying. We all agree.
Oh, I thought you were
with that.
talking about the siding, okay.
No,
yeah.
no, no,
I'm good,
no, around the
I'm good, I'm
window.
good.
Okay,
Okay, so
guys.
everybody else is in agreement?
Yellow
Yes.
Okay,
and
let's,
white.
Okay, so siding color is good and white. Okay.
Right.
okay, so then the motion would be to approve the application with the yellow siding sample that was shown at the meeting, white trim,
White trim,
you're building the trim out as you described,
and then the windows are.
the architectural
so-
windows,
Mhm.
keeping the porch rail and the
All the
columns.
architectural details.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you gonna paint those white? Okay.
And the garage.
And doing the garage in the same color scheme. Let's have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further I didn't ask, did I ask for public comment? I did. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's just me. Motion.
Democracy.
Hey, listen, stick
No,
that
it's fine, you
together.
can-
5-1, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, application 2017-33, Wyndham County Humane Society. And I suppose I should disclose, I have an employee who was, I think is still pretty heavily involved with Humane Society. I don't view that as a conflict. Cece,
Sorry?
Carolyn Connery.
Oh, yes, you call her Cece. I'm like, who is it?
We had another Carolyn before she came to
Oh,
work in our
okay, so
office,
she's
so
Cece. Okay.
so she had to pick a new name. Okay, so please tell us about your project.
Well, I'm Adam Hubbard. I'm a landscape architect in town, and I've been helping the Humane Society with their planning of a project to expand their facilities. This is Annie Gahn, the executive director of the Humane Society. What is proposed in this project is an addition, and what we have here is a colored plan that's slightly earlier than the.
Can you move that 2 feet to the right? You're fine. Perfect.
What you're looking at here is a plan that we sent in with our wetland permitting, and it's, this plan here is the plan that you have in your files, and they're very, very similar. I'm just showing you the colored version for,
this is great.
for explanatory reasons, and I'll flip it and get into some of the details of it. So we're here for two purposes. One, this is two properties, 948 West River Road and 916, 918 West River Road. This is what we call the King House property. And I understand that this property already has a conditional use, and we applied for a conditional use, so I guess what we're asking for is an extension of that conditional use.
What, can you remind me what or I don't know if Brian's better to do this. I remember this application, that's an abandoned house, right?
No.
It's owned by the Humane Society. It's not heavily used at the moment.
I'm renting it out to an employee.
Oh,
and
okay.
prior, we bought it from Sandy King, who was living there. Her parents bought it in the 60s or
I wonder why I thought that. Okay. Well, anyway, what was the last permit, and does this differ from it? And if so, how?
So I think it was over a year ago.
No, I got a copy of that if you wanted it.
2 years ago, before we purchased the property, we wanted to make sure we could use it for the purposes we intended.
Okay.
So we came for a conditional use permit, which I believe has expired at this point.
And, and those uses are, so this is rural residential and
Animal sheltering.
What's that?
And animal sheltering.
And the use that we're looking for is for animal shelter, but really just administrative and storage functions in this property, in this house here. So
storage of animals or storage
of gear.
Okay.
There is an existing pool deck here that is proposed to be removed, and then eventually they would like to be able to put some kennels for some outdoor time on this south side of the house, so that this property will be connected by a path here.
How close are the closest neighbors that might be able to hear barking?
Yeah.
There's a neighbor, I don't know, I'm not sure how.
Brian's right here, and he's the next property over.
Well, to the King property, it's 50 feet,
Okay.
pretty close.
So you're sort of just in that white area off to the side?
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Can you just identify yourself since?
Brian Young, 962 West River Road.
Okay. Did I swear you in?
Yes.
Okay. So the kennels or open area, whatever you want to call it, when would those be in use?
That would be during business hours. So the general business hours are 12 to 5. It's not for overnight boarding, or it's not for early morning or late evening use. It would just be a sort of the ability to get some more kennel space for crowding purposes, relieve some crowding purposes.
Would there be any strange lighting on the building that you'd be adding?
No.
What would the use of that driveway be?
The same as it's currently. You pull in and then there's a couple dirt parking spaces. We've probably formalized that, but the same. There's a garage and 2 parking spaces.
And it would just be a couple employees parked there rather than the tenants?
Staff. The idea is not to have clients or customers come to the King House. This is strictly office and administration over here, with the exception of that outdoor.
Landscaping's not going to change?
Landscaping's not going to change. I should tell you that as you saw in the letter, if you took the time to read it, the property is subject to the Vermont wetland rules, and we've secured an individual wetland permit. The wetland is this lighter blue line here, and it's whether or not it's a Class 2 wetland is up for debate, but the state took that jurisdiction over it, and so they asked us to get an individual permit. So among the constraints on this property, this wetland provided some significant challenges for us for developing this property. So to answer your question about landscaping, currently there's a backyard with a septic system here, and they've asked us to do our best to revegetate the buffer. So this lighter blue line is the 50-foot setback, and we're going to revegetate some of this buffer area along the.
It's sort of the standard native species.
That's right, native wetland species.
Okay. Are there any runoff issues towards that abutter on the side there?
No, there's a sort of wash or a gully that comes down off the hill here, and it comes down and lands on the King property house, and The soils actually here, one of the reasons I would have contested if we were up for it, contesting the wetland jurisdiction, is that the soils here are extremely well draining. These are sands and gravels, and this runoff comes and it doesn't even leave this property. It all infiltrates very quickly. You know, there's a bit of a low swale that runs the length of this and then crosses the highway here, and that's largely dry, and 80% of the time, despite the fact that this is a seasonal stream, but it runs quite often and quite steady, and it never makes it off the property, but it does flow this way.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if we put conditions on our last permit. Do you know?
That's what I'm...
Well, we got a gentleman with the permit here. Sorry, your name was Brian?
Brian Young, I mean, I've got your
It's gonna go up to the line.
Would it be all right if I just looked at it for a second?
yeah, this is, I was hoping you would have it, but.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I leave a lot to be desired.
My remembrance is that there was water up to the King property that affected the King property. The house, rather.
Is that what you were looking for?
It does get wet in this area here, but it doesn't get into the house itself. The yard, actually, there's an in-ground septic system here, and they wouldn't be allowed to be installed in where there's standing water or seasonal high water. But the way that your speculation is not too far off, because what has happened is that the runoff off the hill has come down, and it periodically fills up this area, and so the water has pushed over into the yard, and then over time they go back, and previous owners have sort of redirected the water away from the house. So if you just let this run consistently, it might fill in down there again.
Is the amount of visitors going to change as a consequence of this at all?
No. Maybe a slight. There will be a slight increase here, but not significantly.
Between 5 and 10 a day, maybe?
What was the number?
5 and 10 a day?
Yeah.
Is that?
Excuse me, I didn't hear the question.
I was asking if the amount of visitors to the Humane Society would change significantly, and then I asked if it would be 5 or 10 a day.
Yeah.
Would you like me to continue talking about the King property, or should I move over to the main project here? I can tell you some more.
Whatever you were going to talk about, continue. I apologize for interrupting.
That's okay. Ask questions along the way, I don't mind. So the challenge of this is as challenging a site for expansion as I've come across, because you have steep slopes, you got utility right-of-ways, you have wetlands, you have a highway right-of-way, and then we also need to find space for a leach field and a septic system. The current system is proposed to be moved from where it is here over into this area. So if you look at it with the setbacks here, you have the wetland buffer, the 50-foot wetland buffer. You have the front yard setback along here, and then of course the wetland, and then the leach field needs an isolation distance from roads, and we're going to actually need a waiver from the potable water and wastewater disposal division to sort of compromise that isolation distance, which we've discussed with them. So the building footprint you see at 4,120 square feet is really the only buildable area in the property. The challenge that it presented, and you'll see that we've asked for some leniency on some of the standards, including amount of paving in the front yard setback, amount of landscaping for parking, and landscaping in the front yard setback, is because in order to, we tried a number of different configurations to be able to access the parking in the back. Currently there's existing gravel parking in the back of the property that results from the removal of some of those buildings. If you've seen the property, you may recall there were some, it was like cabins or something.
And there was a ranch house we took down a couple years ago.
So in the back of the property, there is some existing gravel parking that, as we said, resulted from taking down some buildings. So in order for us to be able to build any expansion, we were sort of forced into bringing the access around the front and within the front yard setback. So we're asking for some leniency on that standard in the application. These little red areas that you see here are the net increases in, or areas within the buffer that are new impacts. So there's very little new impact. It was the existing parking was from here all the way to the edge over here. And we've proposed porous paving for the parking area and then stormwater, a rain garden at the end of that. And so we've actually been able to reduce the amount of impervious surface on the site in spite of the expansion and the driveway there.
How close is the, to your rain garden, to the wetlands? I mean, is it, I can see it's right on the edge.
Yeah, it's about 15 feet from the wetland.
Okay.
And the same is true with the edge of that porous paving. This porous paving will receive half of the building, more or less, and then it'll run across paved surface and then into this porous paving, which will provide storage and infiltration.
Okay.
And then when that is full, it'll discharge into the rain garden, and then the rain garden will discharge into the wetland. And the state wetland division has reviewed that and approved that.
Okay.
So the landscaping you'll see is we've done our best to add some nice street trees along here. These are the Princeton elm, so we got 3 elm trees, and then the front side of this building will the proposed, this will remain gravel parking and access and paved. We have to pave the back parking so that gravel doesn't fill up the porous paving, but this will remain gravel. And this half of the building and this area of parking and access will discharge into a vegetated swale along the front of the property here. And so these plantings you see are also wetland plants, native, and then the similar makeup of the plants in the buffer back then. We've asked for, as I said, we've asked for some leniency on the standard because we've taken up this half of the parking is existing and takes up the front yard setback, and then this proposal of the access, this 18-foot access around the building, also takes up a considerable amount of space that sort of makes it difficult to meet the standard on the landscaping density. You still need to maintain snow storage at each end of the parking lot. There'll be some minimal snow storage along the front. The state has asked for signage and a split rail fence to delineate the remaining buffer and the wetland. And for lighting, what we've proposed is there's some existing building mounted lights on the current structure, and then we'll light the entrances, one at the end, and then the rest of the lighting, or one on the corner here as well. And then the rest of the lighting is proposed to be bollard lighting and downcast, shielded, cut-off fixtures. And what we thought would be nice would be to add some of those fixtures on the fence posts that kept it low and directed away from the wetland. So with lighting on the building and some low lighting on the parking, we feel like we can make it a safe and comfortable situation for staff. This will be mostly staff parking back here.
So there's no lighting, there'll be no lighting fixtures in the buffer between the parking and the wetland? We have 4 post-mounted lights on the fence post. So there will be low lighting between the parking and the buffer. But that split rail fence is proposed to be the delineation for the sort of no-go zone for the state's intent.
Lights will be off after hours?
Yep. Yeah, mostly, they'll be photometric or by timer or by motion sensor. But I think we decided on motion sensor actually.
Yeah.
And really they're just mostly intended to satisfy the winter month you know, 3 to 6 p.m. hours. But no lighting is expected to leave the site or affect neighbors or.
Further questions from the board?
How many employees do you have there at any one time?
At any one time, 6.
So I guess it troubles me a little bit to have those parking spaces back out on the back of the wetlands out there. And as many times as I've driven by there, and it's a lot, I only ever see the most 3 or 4 cars parked out in front. So what was the determining factor in putting all those parking spaces back?
Well, you asked about employees, but when you add volunteers, currently that back, where we're parking in the back, there's usually 7 or 8 cars there. And then I have volunteers that park on the side of the building because there's no room in the back. If you were there Saturday when we had puppies, I could hardly get in. There were cars everywhere. So there are these kind of ebbs and flows to the traffic if we have some highly adoptable dogs or a spay-neuter clinic. So in general, I think that's going to carry this regular parking spaces very well, and on overflow days we'll probably be double parking or stack parking a little bit, but that's not going to happen often.
According to the square foot calculation for parking minimum requirements in the code, it's 1 to 300 square feet, I think, and that would put us at about 26 spaces.
Yeah.
And so we've reduced we're asking for a reduction in that minimum down to 22 spaces. And I think mostly I think that the 22, based on our discussions, is sufficient for the current customer and client and staff and volunteer, but it is, the ability to handle some bigger events is also part of the goal, and we're actually kind of challenged on that.
So the rocks that are put into that parking area,
yeah,
the water that goes through that, where does it go?
So the drainage off the roof and the paved area goes into the parking stalls and infiltrates between the either pavers or through the porous concrete, and then it'll have about 2 feet of 1.5 inch crushed stone that provides a significant amount of storage, and then that will be directed to the rain garden, which will fill and then discharge.
So it's not going to go over the back?
No, it's not going to go over the back. In fact, this will be raised a little bit to prevent that.
So you have 2 additional parking spaces near the King House, right?
Well, currently my tenant is married with 3 children, so currently they park 4 cars there. We envision my office and the Director of Development's office, so we'd be parking 2 cars there on a pretty regular basis, and we might have a visitor or 2 on occasion.
I would
So
like to.
that frees up spaces in the back.
It does free up a space in the back, but I do, again, when we bring up transport dogs from the south, we will need every space and more. And on spay-neuter days and clinic days, on a daily basis in the morning when we're not open to the public, all you're going to see is 2 or 3 staff cars. If you drive by on a busy afternoon, you'll see the back is more full with volunteers, etc. And then on those high volume days, they're parking on the grass and everywhere, which way they can.
I'd like to add, do you have more questions about the parking?
Well, the only other question I have is the fire trucks can get around there into the back.
Yep. We've run the template for the Bravro pumper truck to get around the back. A point of discussion that came up during with the abutter here, Mr. Young, is that he has a concern that, and it's a concern that Annie has as well, about people going past the exit, past the entrance here. It's a fairly high-speed highway, essentially, and it's with the building set back from the road, it's not as obvious as you would hope for passersby. And his concern and Annie's concern people often drive past and then have to turn around. And it's a nuisance for Mr. Young to have people turning around with grandkids and stuff in the yard, and it's actually somewhat dangerous when people come by and then U-turn on the highway and stuff like that. So what we've tried to do, it's not huge, but we've moved the road, the access point down a little bit, and it will also be built up more. Currently, if you're driving out Route 30, the access sort of drops off the side of the road there. We've built that up a little bit, and the drop-off will be further in towards the parking. The current sign is right about here. We'll then be able to move the sign a little closer to the road. What we've shown here is a 22-foot wide opening, and we've been back and forth in discussions among the design team and the owner about widening that entrance. V-Trans wasn't so keen on it, but they might be flexible if it met your approval, and knowing that there's a concerned neighbor, that if we widen this a little bit, it might make more of a presence. Widen it to 24 or 26 feet. It's a little excessive, but it's also a sort of unique circumstance in that we're trying to really announce the entrance, so we don't have this condition where people are zipping by, backing up, or U-turning or turning around in a neighbor's yard.
Or landing in the ditch.
So I think what we'd like to ask is the permission to widen it, whatever seems reasonable to you as a board. 24, 26 feet seems like a measure to sort of deal with that a little bit.
Other board questions? I know we have one member of the public.
Yeah, that would be me. Brian Young, 962 West River Road. Could you explain the kennels next to the King House a little more? That was new to me.
So currently where the swimming pool deck is, we were thinking of putting some fenced-in kennel space here, again for daytime use. Maybe Annie could describe.
Yeah, we did talk about it when you came by the other day. It would be a place to have dogs out for supervised play by volunteers. Just right now we have 1 yard, so really you can put maybe 1 dog or 2 or 3 dogs out to play together, and really dogs playing together is one of the best ways to keep them happy.
So it'd be fenced.
It's 3 little fenced-in yards.
Okay.
Yep, and volunteers would come over with a dog or 2 and maybe play ball or.
And as far as landscaping and stuff, I'm not too good. I mean, I like this plan a lot better than what I saw in 2015. That was real general, and it was like
that was our first stab at it.
Yeah, and this I like a lot better. And again, my concerns are any landscaping or goes on the King property won't affect my property as far as the runoff. That is, I'm not sure of the definition of a seasonal pond. I mean, it runs all year. In the springtime, it's really running. And it does dry out pretty quick. But if there's any adjustments made on that property, I don't want it coming onto my property.
I think what happens on our end will actually benefit you guys, because there is a swale and a berm there that we'll be maintaining. And right now that stream comes down and turns onto our property. And we can't change that, so we're gonna just make sure that stays healthy and runs it along the back of the property.
I mean, we can easily put a condition on that it not increase runoff.
Right, that's all, yeah.
And in 2015, I said it then, I'll say it now, we're happy to look at landscaping that demarcates our properties more clearly and maybe has a little sound barrier.
Yeah.
We could talk about that for sure.
Add some plantings along this northerly boundary.
I mean, that strikes me as a good idea, just because it would reduce the possibility of sound travel. Even if it was something simple as, what are those cheap bushes, the hedges?
Arborvitae.
Yes.
Yes, arborvitae, yeah, sure.
Right, there's a line of trees there now, and as you were talking.
Oh, there is?
from the King property and my
Yes.
property, there is a line of trees.
Okay,
And I believe they are on my property.
okay.
But, you know,
Did
We can add to that.
Any
Yeah, because
fairly
there's not much vegetation for a good 5 feet and then the trees.
Yeah, and as I was looking at them, some of them are gonna, and listening to the,
Sure.
some of them are gonna have to come down
Mm-hmm.
in the near future, and we can, you know, we're good neighbors, so
We're great neighbors.
Uh-huh.
Ryan's a great neighbor.
But I just wanna make sure that, you know, there's a sound, not only for my benefit, but for your benefit, because I have motorcycles.
Yeah, he's the real problem. No, I'm just kidding.
One of these days, I'm gonna get a Harley Davidson. Then you'll be.
Then the dogs will be barking.
But the other point you brought up, and I wanted, you know, I'm basically here just to, so I'm on record, is the driveway situation. You know, the cars, speed limit's 50, but it's a highway, they go more than 50, believe me, and that's right. But what happens is a lot of our customers are from out of town, out of state, so they're not aware of where the Humane Society is. So any added driveway there would be great, and the signage is as close to the road as possible would be great.
We, in discussions earlier with him, we talked about perhaps adding, we'll be back for the sign permit at a later date. This one will probably be very similar to the one that exists here, but in discussions with Mr. Young, we thought maybe adding another sign to this entrance here, and like I said, administrative offices, would just give another visual cue to people.
Right, that way if they miss the first driveway, they'll see,
They can turn
they
here.
can turn around in her driveway instead of my driveway.
Very good idea.
So I think that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to comment on this application? Any questions? I mean, I'll just note that it seems like a no runoff condition would make sense, as well as a landscape screen is approved by the zoning administrator on the north boundary and the 26-foot entrance. I mean, 26 feet seems appropriate to me. I don't know if you guys have different feelings.
I wonder.
Wasn't somebody killed, like, attempted mile down there?
Excuse me?
Wasn't somebody killed last spring? A couple tenths of a mile down?
Oh, yes, it was up a little bit further, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
a
the problem with that
nasty
stretch of road
road.
is
It
like
really
the
is.
first passing zone, once you get out of Brattleboro,
Yeah.
man, they come
Yeah.
screaming by.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's gonna be
I mean, that seems to me to be very sensible.
I tried to get them to move Route 30 on the other side. When I built a bridge, you know,
Yeah, right.
put it over there.
I almost daily am sitting in my office, ooh, don't watch, because somebody they'll stop and then they'll pull into the breakdown lane on the wrong side of the road and back up. They'll do everything. It's not good.
George, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I just wonder if we make the entrance wider, would that encourage 2 lanes exiting the property?
We, in previous iterations, we had the 3-lane entrance with a, you know, so you could wait and go left. While somebody's waiting to go left, somebody could turn right. And we determined that there wasn't enough average daily trips to warrant that slip lane.
I'm wondering if this will make it wide enough that they'll do that.
I don't suspect that that's, first, I don't think that there's enough volume turning left to create a problem. There's barely enough volume, there's barely enough volume to have more than 1 car at a time there anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't have a concern with it, but I hear your concern.
That could create another problem, though, if you're trying to turn right. It's hard to see up the road
That's
from
what I
being
was
down the
thinking,
hole. Yeah.
20, let me just think. I think that if you had 2 10-foot lanes and a 12-foot entrance lane, a typical one is 32 feet wide. So 26 feet wide is not really, and if we mark it adequately, we'll have to have a paved apron here anyway. And so we can mark it as such that we make the exiting lane a strict 12-foot lane, and then the entrance lane a little wider, have that painted as a 14-foot.
So we can have a one in, one out condition?
One in, one out.
Yeah.
So,
I think line marking in that way would alleviate that problem.
so where are you gonna put the office space? Is that, when you just said, is there gonna be a driveway into that space? Is there gonna be other entrances in? No?
No.
Okay.
No,
So I thought he
it'll
said
be one
something.
entrance, and what we're talking about is making the entering painted aisle to be a little wider, and then the exit aisle to be the standard 12-foot width.
No, I guess I'm confused about when he said when you make the turnaround in her property, I wasn't figuring
the
out.
other- no, just
at the King House.
right. It would just be turnaround in a parking space.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? Do we all agree that it's appropriate to approve the application as proposed with landscape screening on the northern boundary? Condition that runoff towards that boundary not increase. 26-foot entrance, if the state approves it, one lane in, one lane out.
And the vegetation, landscaping over on the right.
Yeah, that's,
Right,
I said that.
okay.
Was there a fire department report on this that they wanted a knock box out there?
Well,
That
it's
is a
just,
standard.
we'll just add the standard, whatever the fire department says, they've got to get approval.
Could you
Condition.
forward me a copy of that?
Will do.
So, can I get a so moved?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You got our first unanimous vote of the night. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thanks for the work.
Thank
that
you.
did. I didn't know that was the road that I wanted to take.
Congratulations. Go easy on
I
them.
know they do.
They've been through a lot.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for your patience. You guys want a quick break or anything before you start?
You can. So we brought slides. Thanks, Brian. And then I'm gonna set up the.
Okay. Let me use this opportunity to run to the bathroom.
You get a drink of water.
I'm calling a 90-second break here. Okay, it's 5 to 9. We're back on the record. TV's on. TV's on. Okay, application number 2017-34, Retreat Farm LLC. Can you identify yourselves?
I'm Buzz Schmidt. I'm the Executive Director of Retreat Farm Limited. This is Marla Keene, who is the project manager working for VHB, Professional Engineers from Burlington. Marla is a civil engineer. I'm going to start and explain the project generally, and Marla will get into the specifics of the plan. I'll then follow up with an explanation of our anticipated phasing of renovations, and we welcome your questions at any time during the presentation. It won't be as long as it sounds.
Fire away.
Okay, so Retreat Farm Limited is a 501c3 public charity that was formed 18 months ago to restore and preserve the 9-barn farmstead and 500 acres of forested and agricultural lands of the historic Retreat Farm. We're also adapting these structures and lands, establishing a platform to support the emergence, we hope, of dozens of community advancing farm, food, education, processing, recreational and cultural resident enterprises, all led by local individuals and organizations. Additionally, we ourselves will operate 4 of those residential programs. Our Children's Farm and Forest program, which is the outgrowth of the petting farm that has been on the property for the past 20-odd years. A retreat farm events program, the recreation platform of trails, primarily of trails, and what we're calling the Rockwell Hill platform for farm enterprises on one of the large farm parcels that is not subject to this hearing and is not in the farmstead area. We hope ultimately, as a result of our work, that Brattleboro will have full benefit of iconic and beautiful new gathering, event, and conference spaces and facilities that'll have one of the top children's nature farm education programs in the country, that'll have a collection of synergistic, primarily land-based enterprises that complement Brattleboro's Main Street experience and further the area's leadership among sustainable communities and food systems. And it will enjoy a wonderful combination of children's programs and adult recreation, nature, education, cultural, and food-related experiences that will appreciably improve Brattleboro's ability to attract and retain young families and entice visiting families to spend more time in the area. That's for Brattleboro. And for Vermont, we hope that we will establish a new model for restoring and preserving historic structures and lands while simultaneously building resilient communities. So the balance of this presentation will explain our strategy to establish this platform for these enterprises at the farmstead that would make these positive impacts possible. Marla.
Let me try and switch the way the presentation is going so that I can, there we go, let's try this. Thinking. Oh, there it is. Yep. Sorry, I wasn't able to use the mouse from where I was. Apparently I'm not able to use the mouse here either. There we go. So the concept to realize the overall retreat farm visioning is constrained obviously by the site. And the site as it exists today has 2 vehicular entrances on Route 30, here and here. This one was closed as part of the last approval that came before you guys. There are 3 terraces topographically. There's the lower terrace, which is built out with the existing farmstead. Grafton Cheese is on the lower terrace. There's the middle terrace, which you can see, this was the former location of the piggery. And then there's the upper terrace. So all of these things are geologic, they're not man-made. It's actually a really interesting geologic setting, neither here nor there for this presentation. So this concept was made to sort of fit within the existing setting. The circulation comes in off of Route 30 into one of these 2 entrances. This is the 3rd entrance, which in the future will be where trucks are directed to go. It's also the overflow parking up here. And then this is sort of the first sort of set of things happens in the lower terrace. Then we move on up to the middle terrace, and then finally up in the 3rd terrace for the final phases. Buzz is going to talk about phases a little bit later. This project is subject to 1111 permitting. That permit application has been submitted. The project is subject to wetland permitting, state wetland permitting, state stormwater permitting, construction and operational, as well as wastewater and water supply permit. So all those permits are going to be applied for, as well as an overall Act 250. We've requested the done the jurisdictional opinion for, the word escapes me, for the letter from Act 250, and we have not yet received that, but we can forward it to you when we do receive it. So, a couple things I wanted to point out that have been added to the plan since it was first submitted to you guys. One thing is there were a few places where guardrails were missing, and those have been added anywhere the slope is steeper than 3-on-1 to protect both vehicles and pedestrians. We've added signage for accessible parking, and then we have added one sidewalk, which I'll point out a little bit later. So the next thing I want to talk about is the natural resources. This slide highlights the natural resources on the site. Orange is wetlands, both class 2 and class 3. Blue in the left-hand side of the page is riparian areas. The red line is the floodplain line, and the blue on the right-hand side is actually the floodplain compensatory storage area. So any fill within the red line is being mitigated and balanced by cut generally within the blue area, but there's other areas that are small amounts of cut as well, and the project does reduce, does have a net cut in the floodplain, so there's no fill in the floodplain, therefore a floodplain permit will not be needed. As you can see on the left-hand side of the page, the riparian area is mostly contained within the wetlands, and therefore the wetland buffer represents the riparian buffer, except to the top of the page, which is west in this configuration. The riparian area has its own buffer. The little triangle you see up to the top left of the page is a class 3 wetland. These wetlands were delineated in 2015 and have been approved preliminarily by wetlands. We anticipate that they're going to want to come out there again and take another look, but we don't anticipate anything to change. So we're kind of going with those for the moment. The project has done its best to avoid and minimize impacts to all of these buffer areas. You can see that we have a net cut in the floodplain, so obviously we're doing our best to avoid fill in the floodplain. In terms of wetlands, I think my pointer, oh, there we go. So the existing access road comes through the middle of the wetland. We're actually moving it a little bit farther out. It does still come through the wetland, but it's reduced. And this is an existing bridge that we're maintaining. We're not appreciably increasing the wetland impacts. The other big area of wetland impacts is here. This is an existing animal feeding area that's underlain by a concrete slab, and we're not proposing to remove that slab. We're going to continue to use that impacted buffer as it is today, except for the change in use, but it'll still be an impacted buffer. And then this is also an existing impacted buffer that will remain. So aside from the slight change here, from coming across a little bit lower to coming across a little bit higher, our wetland impacts are relatively unchanged. The next thing I wanted to talk about was lighting. Reading through the Brattleboro requirements for lighting, we have minimized impacts to Route 30. The outer line on this plan is the 1-foot candle line. The middle is 2-foot candles, and the inner is 3-foot candles. That's also replicated in the site plan that you received as part of the application package. You can see that there's less than 1-foot candle along Route 30. We have a little bit of wetland buffer impact here. In the application package we sent to you guys, we did enumerate those impacts. And then one thing we realized is that we are going to have to add lighting in here. We're going to limit that lighting to be within the existing impacted buffer, the existing non-functioning buffer. So that's what I have for lighting. Interrupt, please, if you have questions. In terms of multimodal transportation, the project is along Linden Street, which is a Route 50 or a 50-mile-an-hour zone. You all know the traffic study was recently completed for Linden Street, and the project is not proposing to provide a sidewalk along Linden Street. Linden Street is currently uncurbed, and there's a gutter or a ditch along the road, which will remain. So instead of creating a new sidewalk along here, we're actually creating the sidewalk through the property. And this sidewalk is mentioned in the Route 30 study as being available for connection to any future sidewalk. There's no sidewalk up here now. If that sidewalk does get constructed in the future, it can be connected to the Retreat Farm sidewalk. This little piece here, from here to here, is what was not in our original application. We've since submitted revised plans that do show that little piece of sidewalk. There's also internal sidewalks, which you can see if you wanted to take a more close look by reviewing our site plans. The green doesn't show up particularly well, but there is accommodations for buses, tour buses, or public buses if they become available over time through the mover. The buses will access the site here, and there's a drop-off area, and then we provided for 3 bus parking spaces, which are included in our parking count at this end of the site. The other modes of transportation that we're accommodating are bicycles. We've placed our bike rack close to Linden Street. As a cyclist, I know that if I'm looking for a bike spot, I'm not gonna think to drive, way up here, so I'm gonna park at the closest spot, and if there's signs or fences to park against, and I haven't had to come up here yet, I'm gonna park here, so we put the bike parking close to where people are likely to access the site. If there's demand for bike racks in the future, which would be great, if we have more bike users, we'd be willing to add more bike parking as the project develops. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the Retreat Farm trails, which we're adding a little bit through the project to make some additional connectivity to the existing trail network, which is out here, and then there's a little bit of it out here. So those are shown in pink on this plan. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is the noise. We did review the the administrator's review of the project mentions the noise study that we prepared. It appears that in the zoning regs, noise is supposed to be below 45 decibels as generated by the project in rural residential zones after 4 p.m. We interpret that to mean noise generated by the project, not total noise. So, and please correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, but the existing sound levels are in the adjoining neighborhoods are all above 45 decibels. So with the project, it remains above 45 decibels, but with the project alone.
It's 70 for house to house.
70?
It's 70 decibels. I think you're not supposed to go over 70.
Oh, during the day, and then there's an evening, right?
Oh, it's changed?
Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind.
Okay.
Continue. Do you know the answer to that question?
But the board does have the power to allow projects to exceed those sound levels. So you could put a reasonable limit on sound from entertainments.
Okay.
And if there's concerns about noise going forward in the future, the project's willing to seek an entertainment permit as needed, but the flexibility and the inherent uncertainty leads us to not pursue that at this time. So Buzz was going to talk a little bit about phasing.
Right. So as you can appreciate, restoring and sustaining this historic retreat farm is a difficult proposition. The cost of restoring and repurposing the many historic structures is immense, and the economic climate for new enterprise is uncertain. All rural locations in the country, and Vermont is included in that. Achieving the vision implicit in this master plan will require that we establish numerous sustainable business models for dozens of enterprises, attract several resourceful, intrepid entrepreneurial leaders, secure many millions of dollars in philanthropic capital to subsidize restorations and leases, and have plenty of time to implement a master plan that respects the full set of challenges that we're facing. We cannot therefore stipulate what enterprise or use will go in a specific building at a specific time. But we've advanced what we think is a logical representative phasing scenario in the materials that you have. And so just to show you, this is where we are today with our current permits, and this is what you'd expect to see this summer with the completed farmhouse, the farmhouse square all landscaped. In red here, the Children's Farm and Forest program. Basically, the petting farm has moved over to this side and will now open up into this 12 acres that surrounds it for animals on pastures and nature trails and gardens and so forth up here. That's the first phase, and that's not the subject really of this hearing. The second phase will see a modest renovation of this structure where Food Connects hopes to establish the rudiments of a physical food hub here to support local agriculture. We would hope to transform this barnyard area back here. That's the one with the 18-inch thick concrete pad on it, including this pavilion here, a new lawn here, raised beds here for intergenerational garden here, and hopefully restoration of the hay barn over here into auditorium space. We also hope to move the blacksmith shop, which was here, but it is now sitting. We lifted it by crane, and it's sitting in a bunker back here, awaiting approval to move it here where it would be restored, right here, and become part of the children's program, either as a museum of the retreat farm or a classroom, or perhaps a new entrance area for this complex. We haven't figured that out exactly yet. And that we hope to do that next year, 2018. 2021, so we're giving ourselves a little bit of time. The flagship enterprise, if things unfold the way we hope, will be here in the north barn where the petting farm was originally. This is the iconic barn, the most central, and we hope that will become a farm-to-table cafe and market featuring local production in here. We also hope by then to have restored the horse barn, which will be it's the one barn that has little rooms. It was a dormitory for hired hands, and we're working with a number of the environmental groups in the area to establish common office space for groups like Bonneville Environmental Education Center, Vermont Land Trust, Vermont Youth Conservation Corps, Food Connects, and the Ecovation Hub in here, which would be really great if that worked. And then in 2023, we hope to work on the big old dairy barn, the cow barn right here. We've mentioned a number of uses in the larger document, and in the brief phasing thing, we just talk about reestablishing a dairy over here in Creamery. I think it might be more likely that this will become an exhibition hall, or possibly artisan space. We're talking to some local groups about artisanal uses, not food artisanal uses, but artistic uses. And then this would be later again, and it would have to be after other other value was established in this village of enterprises, but we'd hope that this could become a more upscale restaurant with a cooking school and perhaps a commercial kitchen that would then interface with the Food Connects food hub here and the market here promoting the local production. So that becomes a food corner at some point in the distant future. 5, 6, that's 6.
Yeah.
So everything you've seen thus far, other than the small pavilion here, which is really replacing a large shed, which we will have demolished, which sits here, everything else is existing structures. We're now going to talk about 2 sets of new construction, 2 sets of buildings that are new. This one here, we call it the Enterprise Barn. It's a new barn that we'd seek the permit to build. Wouldn't be built without demand, but we hope that some smaller food processing organizations would move into this clean structure, maybe 4, that could operate effectively there. And that wouldn't be till for another 10 years. And then the last one is an eco lodge, which we wouldn't expect for perhaps 15 years. And that's the one that would inhabit that upper terrace that Marla referred to. But you can see this would be the base lodge up here, and then you can just kind of make out some cottages up here in this upper terrace. So, as I said, you know, this is a scenario, really, and we will have to work very closely, or we hope that you will determine that it makes sense to leave the relationship with the administrator as we get to each phase, and so that he can confirm, he or she at the time can confirm that we're consistent with our permitting, and that the requisite infrastructure is accompanying the successive construction. That's what I have.
So I just want to talk briefly about how the phasing, we have the pictures of the,
sorry.
Didn't warn you about this one.
Yeah.
So these are the future buildings that Buzz just briefly touched on. This is the Enterprise building, which would contain light manufacturing, yogurt making, basket weaving.
It's adjacent to the refrigerator building that already exists, so that's what that represents.
And then this would be the base lodge for the cabins and the Eco Lodge program. I did want to clarify the cottages / cabins are non-residential. They would operate in a manner similar to a hotel.
Right. So I should have said this as well. One of the things that we're trying to respond to is an interest or aspirational need identified by several local people. Most notably this Ecovation Hub Energy, which seeks a more dedicated conference capability in the area to promote environmental issues. And so with the auditorium, exhibition space, numerous classrooms and conference rooms that are in each of the buildings, and this 42-room Eco Lodge, we think that together that would be a wonderful small to mid-sized conference facility for the area.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So this is the whole project altogether. As we talked about, it's really designed, the phasing is designed intentionally and with the project layout. All of the things Buzz talked about in the first several phases are within the existing tier. The only building, which isn't really a building, being proposed to be demolished is the existing, I guess it's a pole barn, in the barnyard square back here, which would be replaced by this more pavilion, more...
It's smaller, it's about...
The old sawdust shed?
No, you mean the one that is coming down?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 75 by 35.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The silo would stay, become part of the features of the program. As you can tell from the existing imagery, if you look through the site plans, there's not a lot of parking or formalized roads. The roads are designed to accommodate the phasing. This road can be built as needed with the beginning. It connects the existing access road over here. This parking can come online. It already exists and will only require some small improvements to support things. As we go forward, the parking that's over here would come online. The road up to the Eco Lodge can come online, and that doesn't require any or very much disturbance of what's been constructed as part of the earlier phases down here. The utility infrastructure also works with this phasing. If you look through the utility plans that were provided to you, you can see that the utilities can be pretty easily stubbed out at each of the different phases. So the electric kind of comes in this way and then can stop and then can come out again and stop and come out as the phasing. So there's very little need to re-disturb earth that's already been disturbed. And then the stormwater management system as well. There's a stormwater pond proposed for down here that accommodates a lot of the new impervious associated with the lower tier access drives. And then as you move up the site, there's additional stormwater. There's stormwater management practices up on the first tier, and then there's stormwater management practices on the middle tier over here, and then again on the upper tier to accommodate the additional impervious. And again, those can be built as the phases come online. It's a decentralized stormwater management system, which gets to the goals of DEC's new permit, even though we are planning to be applying under the current permit program.
Right, careful. So I just wanted to say one other thing, that this whole thing has been planned in concert with the Wyndham Foundation, which was the owner of the property until last August when it granted the property to the new nonprofit organization, Retreat Farm. As part of our operating agreement, our long-term operating agreement, which is recorded, we're coordinating all the parking, landscaping, signage, and all that kind of stuff. So the Grafton Village Cheese Company will, in effect, while it'll have its own identity, it'll be very much a part of this community of organizations.
Thank you, that's very helpful. You don't want to pave the parking spaces because you want to keep it like a farm, right?
Well, yeah, and was there also some requirement that they be gravel? No? Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand the waivers that you guys are applying for, that's all.
Yep.
That's fine, I'm just clarifying that what I assume you're doing is actually what you're doing.
And the sidewalks will be gravel. We've limited curbing to the extent possible. There's only one tiny section of curbing as you come up to the upper tier, which is needed to redirect stormwater. The curb stops are proposed to be timber as opposed to concrete, in keeping with the agrarian setting.
Okay, in lieu of the sidewalk, you're redirecting into the property, right?
Yep.
Why did you want a reduction on the capacity to charge electric vehicles?
The project is willing to accommodate additional electric vehicles. At this time, we felt that the requirements in the zoning aren't necessarily scalable to a project that requires 280 spaces. So as demand increases, the project will be willing to increase the number of spaces, but we felt that something on the order of 6 parking spaces would be more appropriate for this point in, electric vehicle history.
And the street trees, what's the problem with the street trees?
The existing, let me go back a few, there's not really an existing street trees. So this parking exists today in these 2 locations. This is new.
No, the one on the left is the new one.
The one on the, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So these 2 exist and there's really not street trees now. The one, and then we would just be keeping with the same setup.
Okay. So you want to keep the parking lots consistent in design?
Mm-hmm. And not disturb, too much. This, part of the reason we're seeking an 1111 permit is, I don't know if you can see it, this black line is the property line. So
Stay right away.
the street trees in this area would be within the V-Trans right away.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Other members of the board?
I'm kind of curious about the use of alternative energy. Have you considered the possibility of solar?
So let me start that. We would love to have solar. All of these historic barns are under a strict preservation facade easement with the Preservation Trust of Vermont, and they're all antique slate roofs, and they would never let us do that. There's one possibility on the south roof of the cow barn, which it does not face the square. And so we'll definitely look at that to see if that's possible. We're also, because of the phasing and our inability to have certainty about the renovation of all the buildings, it's hard immediately to introduce a district heating system, which would give us the opportunity to investigate pellets or chips as a source of fuel. But as we go, we are piping. We're putting passive. What's it called? Pipes in the floor. Radiant, yeah.
Right,
so we're preparing for radiant,
yeah.
and so that we can convert to it. But we'll be using heat pumps for the most part in the interim. We've got the lands are also constrained by easements with the Vermont Land Trust, which is and the only structures we can put on the lands are farm structures. Can't put a farm residence, but we can put a barn. And we could have solar if it was immediately part of a farm complex, but we could not put a solar farm out on one of the fields. So that's kind of our situation. We're well insulated, though.
Snow storage. When you clear those parking spaces in the front, where's the snow go?
Snow storage on the site is pretty limited. We have prepared a snow storage plan. It sounds like it never made it to you guys, and we can definitely submit that. The pockets of snow storage are small. And there's a recognized need for recognized and accepted need for hauling off-site if those areas get overwhelmed, and those will be disposed of in an acceptable facility.
Other questions? Got some members of the public here. You guys just here to watch, or did anybody want to comment? You don't have to. I just want to make sure everybody's heard who wishes to.
Signed in, so I might as well say something. No, my name is Liz Richards, and I'm on the board of the Harris Hill Ski Jump, which sort of isn't a butter. We got notice. But I can see where none of Buzz's aspirations are going to conflict with us, which is good. And so I wish you guys a lot of luck. I think it's wonderful. And Buzz, I just want to say I hope you have a good succession plan.
Succession plan.
I can't make that a condition.
Do you know something I don't know, Liz?
I was thinking the same thing, Liz. Who knows if I'll ever get to see it. I'm Liz Bankowski. I'm the CEO and president of the Wyndham Foundation, and very involved in this project from the start. You will recall the Wyndham Foundation stepped in to save the farm, also with some resources in the community, but tremendous resources from the foundation when the retreat felt it couldn't keep being in farming anymore. And at the time, we really weren't sure what we would do with it. And over time, it became clear to us at the foundation that it needed its own champion. It needed an entity that could imagine for it and start bringing it into its own, which Buzz has started to do. We've worked incredibly closely through this whole process, as Buzz said, with GVCC and the integration of the foundation. It's a really wonderful relationship. We're very excited about all the possibilities, and yeah, I'm hoping that the progress will come faster than he imagines once people begin to see, even already. I think you're going to stop and say, wow, maybe I want to do something on this wonderful site. So we are very supportive of the whole project.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Other members of the board? So this is the good thing about being the last application.
No, I guess I wanted to, I noticed that you have it phased out till probably it won't be run anymore, but I guess it depends on your funding then. I mean, you can move a phase up if you've got funding to do it, or is it only be?
Yeah, so I think it's more dependent on the quality of the business opportunity that arrives,
okay,
and the sustainability of that opportunity, the quality of the management of it, and how it fits in the community. And so, as Liz Bankowski was saying, that if by this first phase, I think will be really compelling, what you'll see there this summer, and we're hoping that it does attract some people who get the vision quickly and might step forward. But I think with compelling business opportunities, that funding will follow. It won't work the other way around, I don't think.
I just think it's sad that it can't go faster.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel your pain.
You're sharing parking with Grafton Cheese, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Do you have a written agreement
Mm-hmm.
with them?
Yeah.
There's a mutual
Memorandum of understanding.
Reciprocal redevelopment and easement agreement, that was.
I'm just going to restate that because she's not by a mic. Reciprocal maintenance and easement.
No.
Redevelopment and easement agreement.
Reciprocal redevelopment and easement agreement.
It's gonna run with the land. What if, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't remember the answer.
Yeah.
Can you provide a copy to Brian? Do
Yes.
you have a copy?
Certainly.
You have a copy?
No.
Should give a copy to Brian.
Would it be incredibly difficult to just have an agreement there that ran with the land in case some other cheese company bought the factory and made trouble?
I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, because it's worked out for the cheese business, for our needs. I just don't remember us talking about it.
I don't want to commit to it, but I believe it runs with the land. So if somebody else purchases the property, they would actually be subject to it, which is why we have to talk to people.
Is it recorded?
Yeah.
Okay, just since, you should identify yourself since you're sort of giving evidence.
Stand up too.
She's a shy litigator from New York.
Oh, yeah. Gabby Capri down with the Retreat Farm. So, yeah, there's a redevelopment and reciprocal easement agreement. I don't want to commit to saying that it does run with land. I'm 99% sure it does, but it's recorded. It's book 439, page 153.
You just give it to Brian.
Yeah, I'll just download it. Yeah.
My last question.
That was your last? If we made a condition that there be a parking agreement that is an easement that it runs with the land, is this going to be?
Well, we wouldn't object to that. That would be, but I think we might already have it.
Yeah, if you already have it, you've satisfied the condition. I just don't want to, I don't want to be overly technical here if you've already done it.
I mean, yeah, you let me know.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's okay.
So how about a motion to approve the application with that condition and with the waivers as applied for by the applicant?
So moved. Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. We've got some discussion. What were you saying?
The fire department.
I didn't get a fire department memo.
Me neither.
Sprinklers?
How did you get this?
I downloaded it.
Okay.
Sue sent it.
Okay. Have you guys seen the fire department memo? Are any of the things that they suggest problematic?
I think so.
No.
Who made the motion? Would you accept a friendly amendment from Maya to add the fire department
Yes.
conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's second it again.
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That was a really comprehensive presentation.
That was very nice, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My mailman didn't know what to do with the package. Okay, we still gotta adjourn,
That's the first thing.
Thanks for
I second it.
All in favor?
You gotta ask for discussion, Robert's rules.
Okay, discussion's over.
Okay.